Last year, without fanfare, the New South Wales government halted an investigation into allegations of one business's illegal land clearing in the state's northwest.
I'm completely devastated. I've grown up on that land. I've been out there my whole life. It's devastating to see that a large conglomerate can come into this community. It seems like they have special privilege to just clear what they want.
Brother and sister Chris and Claire Priestley say they're whistleblowers in a community unwilling to speak out.
We're not on some sort of giant crusade to stop land clearing. It's just a magnitude of what they do. They think they're just above everything, ripping everything to pieces and leave very little.
A year ago, Chris and Claire Priestley approached Jack Harris, the son of the new owner, on a Crown land stock route recently cleared for crops.
It just got in my body just to do something, because it was just so blatant and arrogant that if I didn't do something, or at least try and do something, they just would continue on.
My brother walked up and said, "You're sowing into a stock route," and I think it's Jack Harris. He laughed at him and he said, "Get off." How you going? You got permission and all approvals for this? Can you show them to us, please?
No.
No?
What's your name? You go and get the police.
Can we see all approvals?
Go and get the police.
Go and get the police?
You go and get the police.
Call the police. We need to see the approvals.
Go and get the police.
Call the police! All I could think is what the old timers, like my father, for example, and Dan Caton, who owned it, like I just thought this is just heartbreaking. This is disrespectful to the people of the land. So yeah, I was just disgusted actually.
Travelling stock routes are public land. This was once filled with lush native grass. Today it's choked by wild rape.
Yeah, so this used to be one of the best Mitchell grass paddocks in Australia. It's an endangered species, and every farmer or grazier loves Mitchell grass. And just through pure greed, that this was knocked over to make way for wheat.
It's Crown land. It's not for farmers to come along and sow wheat into and crop dust, as I've witnessed before. I've seen aeroplanes going across here, crop dusting. I've seen them ploughing. They're going to do development.
During a total fire ban in December 2014, the Priestleys recorded this video, which they claim shows clearing and burning on land they once owned.
I can see flames. I can actually smell the fire, and it is a total fire ban. And if I look out this way, I actually think that could be a bulldozer. Out this way, that's a machine. See? That's definitely a machine.
I'm not against clearing, but having half a dozen bulldozers in there at once, clearing everything in the middle of summer, and even when I fronted them, any other normal person would pull up and think, we better try and do the right thing here. The next day they continued to burn piles of wood and continue to clear. It just never stopped. Even billabongs, floodplains, just everything.
And the result? Aboriginal elder and friend Nellie McHughes saw it.
All the native grasses were gone, all the trees that were there for thousands of years, and it was just, they were all pushed in a heap and they were smouldering and fire, and the rest of the landscape was just barren. Not a thing was grown, nothing, it was just dirt.
I had the police ring me, tell me that they were going to charge me for trespass if I went back on there again. You can virtually clear the size of the moon and get away with it. That's not considered an offence. But if you go onto someone's property when they're burning total fire bans, yeah, you can get into trouble.
As the drought broke in 2010, the bank foreclosed on Chris and Claire Priestley's 4 properties. It was the Harris business, also known as P&J Harris & Sons, who bought up their land, and another giant, called BREWON.
They're over there to speak to you. But unfortunately, we are going to ask you to leave as soon as you get your bits and pieces together.
The Harris business is a force to be reckoned with. A giant in the agribusiness industry, it's one of Australia's biggest landholders and is extremely well connected. The parents are the directors and the son Jack is working with them. The Harris business repeatedly declined interview requests, referring Lateline to its lawyers. The business denies all allegations of illegal land clearing. It dismisses Chris and Claire Priestley as bitter losers, accuses the family of waging a vicious hate campaign, and highlights the fact their mother apologised for earlier defamatory statements, which she also retracted. Lateline witnessed the tensions between the Priestleys and the Harris business.
Geez, you got like vermin with your bloody cameras and microphones.
You're looking well anyway, you haven't aged up, you're thriving.
Yeah, well, try to... You're wasting your time talking to me, I can tell you right now.
The Priestleys were approached by an independent contractor to the Harris business.
Are you explaining why we can't be here on Crown land?
Anyone's interest here.
The exchange filmed from a Crown road. At issue, an irrigation channel, which the Priestleys claim was built by the Harris business before any consent.
What's
Is this
so bad about it?
authorised, Daniel?
What's that?
How big a player are the Harrises?
Well, I won't comment on any one particular family, but I can say that most of the farming belt, certainly across my electorate, which is obviously quite extensive, are made up of large family farms. They're not the big corporates, as some people think. They're families that have been there for a long time. They've consolidated. They've been very good at what they do, and they're expanding in some cases.
What we've done is we have...
Approvals for native vegetation clearing are required to be on a public register. The New South Wales Environmental Defenders Office recently searched for any approvals given to the Harris business to clear their properties west of Walgett.
We have searched those registers. They're complex registers. You navigate through them by GPS coordinates. With the resources that we've had available to us, we have done searches of those registers and we have not turned up any approval for the native vegetation clearing that the Priestleys have witnessed on the Harris properties.
For 28 years, Bill Keene managed the giant BREWON station, now owned by the Harris business.
I've seen from one end to the other, and I know the country inside out.
Separate to the Priestleys' complaints, the New South Wales Office of Environment and Heritage, the OEH, was investigating the Harris business's land clearing. In 2011, the OEH asked Bill Keene to be a witness in a potential prosecution. He was given satellite imagery, which he used to conclude that the Harris business had cleared up to 1,200 acres of native vegetation.
I was saying that the country that had been cleared, and they were aware that it had been done illegally, they wanted me to justify to the fact that, previously it was all native vegetation.
We showed him recent aerial footage of one Harris property, which he compared to a 2013 Google map.
All this country to the west has all been cleared and sown down to wheat.
Now it's all a sea of green.
Yeah, it's all
wheat.
It's all wheat there now. There's been a huge expansion in the amount of cropping there, and to the best of my knowledge, it's all been done without a proper licence or approval.
Tony Graham was the manager who succeeded Bill Keene on BREWON.
We would have loved the opportunity to farm more country. We did contact relevant authorities to try and get that done, but there were no permits that were issued, and under no circumstances was I aware that we would have been able to do that.
When the Harris business bought the property in 2010, Tony Graham was told his service was no longer required. A year later, the Office of Environment and Heritage asked him if he too would be a witness against the Harris business.
I was given some aerial maps, so they were satellite imagery and aerial imagery taken both pre-2010 and post-2010. And it was pretty obvious from those aerial images, and it was just chalk and cheese as to what had occurred to the country in that time, in excess of 5,000 to 8,000 acres that we certainly didn't have anything to do with from a farming point of view, and that was country that I believe, had been cleared.
After 2 years of consultations, Tony Graham and Bill Keene were told the Harris investigation would not go to prosecution.
I was very upset. I was very angry given the time that I know myself and one of the other previous managers put into it. And I was very angry that this does happen time and time again, is that, people do try and push the system as far as they can, and there just seems to be no ramifications come to bear on them. So, yeah, I was very upset.
We all tickle around the edges, but I'm concerned because that country's fragile out there, and I don't see why people should blatantly, illegally clear things like the TSRs. They're there for a reason. They're Crown land. They don't own them. So why can they make try and squeeze an extra few bags of wheat or whatever off what is Crown land?
Well, I can't comment on what's legal or illegal. I'm not aware of any activity that's been deemed illegal in my part of the world.
And you'd leave it up to the experts who are charged with assessing and investigating illegal clearing.
That's right. I mean, the Office of Environment and Heritage has those people. They've got access, I suspect, to better technology now than what they used to. So rather than having allegations made on hearsay or the odd flyover once every 6 or 12 months.
For 2 years, until the end of 2015, Chris and Claire Priestley, in consultation with the OEH, collected evidence of alleged illegal clearing on their former properties.
We have given video footage, photographs. I cannot see how it could be not a strong case.
It was at the same time the OEH was pursuing a case against another New South Wales farmer, Ian Turnbull, in nearby Moree. Environment Officer Glenn Turner was shot and killed by Turnbull in 2014. A year later, Claire Priestley was told the Harris investigation was closed.
I rang the OEH officer up that I'd been dealing with for well over 12 months, and I said, they're sowing wheat now, like, what are you going to do? He said, we can't do anything. He said, I'll get back to you the next day. He called me back the next day and said, Claire, actually, I've been advised that there will be no further investigations, there will be no prosecutions, the case is closed.
The OEH suddenly dropped another investigation up the highway in nearby Weewar, the so-called cotton capital of Australia. 12 farmers were under investigation for illegally clearing their land. They were informed that their properties were about to be inspected by New South Wales Environment and Heritage officers. But the inspections never went ahead. The investigation was suddenly suspended and no explanation was given. Documents obtained by Lateline show it was an email sent by State MP Kevin Humphries that led to the suspension of the investigation. The email was sent to New South Wales Premier Mike Baird and other ministers in May 2015.
I strongly urge that agencies do not seek to engage landholders on this particular issue at this time. It's too explosive and not warranted. Farmers are already looking to blockade any attempt for an on-site visit by OEH. It will be the start of something that will escalate very quickly between farmers from around the state and the authorities.
Your letter, which implied that there was a real risk if environment officers turned up at these properties in Weewar, essentially was saying, be careful because one or more of those officers might get it like Glenn Turner did.
Well, I won't comment on Glenn, but I can go back to when I first became the member in 2007, and there were compliance visits into places in the Macquarie Valley. in particular, where we had something like 25 policemen that were there to protect environment and heritage officers. We don't want to go back to the stage where we need police to protect authorities to go out to investigate things.
The OEH took the opinion that the email amounted to a threat. Internal correspondence reveals the field operation was suspended due to what the agency regarded as the extreme risk of a possible catastrophic consequence. What was the basis for you thinking there'd be this uprising of farmers against authorities?
Well, you need to understand the historical issues.
No,
and
but
as I've said
who was
before,
going to do it? Who was going to do it?
Oh, look, I won't say any individual, but certainly there would have been, I can guarantee you, there would have been a landholder backlash, not just from people in that area, but people from other parts of the state and say, well, here we go again. We're trying to get to a better stage or a situation where we know the laws don't work. Everybody knows the laws don't work.
But the law's the law, and you were urging the enforcement officers not to do their duty.
I didn't speak to any of the authorities. I met with some of the landholders. They had concerns. I expressed those concerns and I supported those concerns.
Nearly a year and a half later, 2 of the farmers who'd been under investigation remained tight-lipped. What can you say about the OEH and its investigations in this part of New South Wales?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing going on, so I can't comment on that at all.
There is no evidence the farmers were planning to blockade OEH field officers. What would you say if people accused you of perverting the course of justice?
Oh, that's ridiculous. That doesn't uphold anywhere. I mean, how long ago was this action? I've not had one complaint from anybody, any jurisdiction, any agency, any media outlet, to say that we didn't get to a good outcome there where people didn't have to confront each other.
The environmental movement has seen your big-time operators just clearing paddocks wall to wall. Obviously, they're alarmed by this, but they need to stop. They're stopping the small people rather than being able to stop the big guys.
The separate investigation by the Office of Environment and Heritage into the Priestley's allegations was recently dropped. The decision came at a time when the government was focusing on changing the laws instead.
On the basis of the confidential legal advice that we received, OEH determined that the matter would not proceed any further.
I felt disgusted because we had given our guts to them, tried to do the right thing by them, and we got seriously let down because I never thought there was a stronger case than what they had there. They had all our evidence, they had their own evidence. I just don't know what more they could have had.
I've done what I thought I could do to try and protect the land, to see absolutely nothing done about it. It's been basically a waste of time and it's incredibly disappointing, I think.
Controversial legislation to repeal the Native Vegetation Act looks almost certain to be passed by the New South Wales Parliament. It will give farmers more scope to legally clear native vegetation. Wee Waa farmer Jono Phelps says the only way to protect it is to give farmers an economic reason to do so.
Well, I just think we need to move forward. There's no sense beating people up around the head with what's gone on in the past. We've got to get to a situation where farmers are compensated for having to, if they need to leave their country with native vegetation on it, they need to be compensated for it. And that way, the incentive to clear it will go.